Hello, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. What we're going to cover today is a different type of hunting tips. There's basic three styles of hunting tips. You have your fixed blade, you have your mechanical, and then a combination. There are several different ones out there. So let's just start off with the fixed blade ones. I've been shooting fixed blades for the whole time I've been shooting them, and I've been shooting Muzzy broadheads. I had started off with a 4 blade, now I'm down to a 3 blade 100 grain. That's what works good on mine. So I'm kind of a little biased towards them, but there's a lot of good broadheads out there. Now you're going to go with the fixed blade. You're going to have either a 2, 3, or a 4 blade fixed blade broadhead. Some of your 2 blade ones kind of look like the old style you'd put on your recurves and longbows. They're shaped so that they have two cutting edges that are opposite each other, and they're sharp clear to the point. There's no extra support or anything really on the front of it. They come to a point. Then you have the ones that have insides cut out. So there's little vented ones, what they call them. And there's several different brands of those. You'll see some of the 2 bladed ones will have just a small blade on the right at the back of it, and some don't have that. Then you go into your 3 blades, and those some of those are solid fixed. You can't move them. You have to just resharpen them. Some of your 3 bladed broadheads are actually set up so that you can use a flat stone to sharpen them again. Where some of them you can't sharpen, you have to do them kind of individually. Some of them have replaceable blades, like your Muzzies that I shoot. They have replaceable blades, so when they get dull, you can replace them. They're a little more difficult to sharpen because you can't just leave them on the broadhead. I believe it's a G5 has a fixed blade that it's designed to be flat, so you can use a flat stone and resharpen them. So that's kind of basic what you're going to get for your fixed blade. Now, some of the advantages of fixed blades, it's always going to cut. You don't have to worry about anything there. You have a cutting surface, it's going to cut as soon as it hits. Some of your mechanical or some of your fixed blade ones, they have a hardened tip on them, an extra bigger tip. They're not razor sharp, but they're tough. I know the Muzzies have what they call a tricore tip on it, which is really stands up really nice to hitting bones and anything else you happen to hit. One night I was practicing and I ended up stuck a Muzzy broadhead into a concrete block. Didn't hurt the broadhead a bit. I just cracked the insert. They're a tough blade. They stand up. So that's something you have to think about too, is what happens when your broadhead hits anything hard like a bone, because you will hit a bone, going through the ribs, you're going to hit that rib. What does the broadhead do to it? And some of the fixed blade ones that don't have that hardened tip on the front of it, they can actually bend over. So that's some of the advantages, disadvantages, depending on your fixed blade ones. So the disadvantage to a fixed blade is they may not fly like your field tips. In fact, I'm going to say they don't fly like your field tips. So you're going to have to go through shooting and see where they group. You might have to readjust where the broadheads line up. I know on mine it's a 3-bladed one. They need to line up exactly like the fletching, so that gives it the best flight. There's ways you can do it, tuning them. That's another whole step in tuning your broadheads to shoot well on your bow. You'll have to learn. May have if you're shooting your field tips, you might be shooting high into the right, where when your broadheads are low and left. Well, in your hunting setup, you would set that up so that the broadheads are hitting where you want to. And if you practice with field tips, just remember that you're aiming at the center, but it's not actually going to hit there, but your broadheads do hit. And you do want to shoot with your broadheads. You want to sacrifice a few of them. So that's a little bit on the fixed blades. The disadvantage, like I said, is they may or may not fly like your field tips. The advantage is it's always going to cut. But now let's go into a little bit on the mechanical broadheads. You have those are normally 2-blade. Sometimes you can get a 3-bladed one, depending on how they're set up. But they're going to be a 2 or 3-bladed one. And the mechanicals, it takes a bit of force to open them up. So you're going to sacrifice a little bit of your penetration into them. Normally they're trying to make a little bit larger cut. So that also is going to make it harder to go in. They're going to fly similar, maybe not exactly like your field tips, but generally they're going to be really close because they're designed to not have those wings up front like your fixed blade ones are. Now, there's a couple of basic styles of mechanicals. One where when it hits, the blades will fold out from the tip, and then other ones, part of the tip pushes down and they fold up from the back. There can be advantages, disadvantages to both ones depending on what you're shooting at. One of the advantages that the fixed blades have on the mechanicals, as you're hitting at an angle, you may have one blade open up before the other one, and now it's going to start cutting before the other side hits and opens up. So your arrow may have a tendency to turn a little bit as it's going in. You may not get that, real good shot going sideways, where the cut on impact ones are going to start cutting no matter what the angle is. So that's some of the disadvantages of the mechanical. You do sacrifice a little bit. So the lighter poundage bows, you're not going to shoot as well with them. You're not going to have the penetration. So you want to be shooting higher pounds, 60 pounds and above is kind of where I set my limit on mechanicals. You want to be shooting at least 60 pounds, that you have enough extra power that you can sacrifice a little bit of the penetration for them. So the disadvantage of that mechanical is you're not guaranteed it's going to open. That's the biggest drawback, is it may or may not open. Especially if you've got a little bit of dirt or something in there, you're out in a little dusty environment or sandy environment, you could get some grits in there. Sand grits or dirt grit, and hold it up. Some of your broadheads will use a rubber O-ring to hold the broadheads in place while you shoot. That's something else you have to look at too, is do you need those rubber O-rings, and then replacing them. One of the advantages of mechanical, like I said, is it does fly real similar. At your shorter ranges, you're probably not going to ever notice a difference. But if you start shooting out longer ranges, if you're one of those that have the opportunity to shoot long range, you're going to want to try your mechanical. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to take and sacrifice one of them just to see how they fly. What you do is you put a little glue on it to hold them so they don't open, because you'll be shooting into a target, and if they open up there, they can get really tough to pull out. And also, once you've shot them, lots of times those blades can get bent, so it's a little harder to reuse them because they are bent. Where your fixed blades, you can just resharpen them. With the mechanicals, you're pretty much ready to shoot it. You need to replace the blades on them. The mechanicals, a lot of those will come in a 3-pack, where your fixed blades will come in a 6-pack. And so you're spending roughly about the same amount of money for 3 as you are for buying 6. But it takes a little bit less time to get them sighted in. Now you have one of the other options is they have some mechanical broadheads that also have fixed blades in them. So you have that combination. So you have the mechanical opens up, and if they do fail open, you do have a couple of blades that will still cut that are large enough to qualify as a broadhead and do the damage. So that's something you have to look at too. How do they open up? How do they stay closed? Now, you have another variation on for turkeys. You have a regular fixed blade broadhead. A lot of those will have 2, be a 4-blade. 2 of them will be sharp, 2 will be dull, because you don't need a lot of penetration on a turkey because they're not very big. The other ones, some of the mechanical ones, are really nice because they have real long blades. So they're going to have, each blade going to stick out sometimes 2-3 inches. So those are designed for a neck shot. So if you're anywhere close, you can miss it by a little bit and still do good damage on it. So those are real big. A lot of times they're heavier, so you'll need to practice with those as well. And they get a little bit expensive as well for those, but they do work really well for that. Then for small game, a lot of times you're going to use a different one. There's what they call an adder, which is basically take off your field tip, and you put this on it, and then screw the tip tip back on. And that's for shooting like at rabbits and stuff like that. You don't have a broadhead, but they just took out there's like I think 6 different prongs on it that will catch into it. Sometimes they call them grasshoppers, so that they, when you hit into the grass, they stick. Then the other ones is like a judo point, which is like a flat point on the front with some wires that hang around it. And those are good for your small game, like your rabbits, because a rabbit doesn't have very tough skin at all. If you've ever seen a rabbit pelt, they're not very tough. So that's kind of what we have just for different broadheads. The biggest thing is you need to pick something, find out where it shoots good for you, and just stay with it, depending what you do. Now, if you're shooting crossbows, now there's where you have to look a little bit different. You can shoot pretty much most of your fixed blades will work just fine on a crossbow, but you still got to shoot them. Now, if you're mechanical, you must get a mechanical broadhead designed for a crossbow, because what will happen is that extra force will actually open up the broadheads. If you get one used for a compound and you shoot in a crossbow, it will open up when you shoot, because they're just not designed to take that initial impact that the crossbow puts on that bolt. So you want to make sure if you're shooting a crossbow that you get one that's designed for that. And they have them out there, so it's just a matter of grabbing which one you want. They have fixed blades and mechanicals both for your crossbows. So that's something you can look at there. Now then, when you go into like your recurves and longbows, depending on which style shaft you're using, if you're using a wooden shaft, then you're going to have ones that glue on. There's broadheads that glue onto the wooden shaft. Now, if you're shooting like a carbon or aluminum arrow, then you can use a regular screw-in one like you use on your compound bows. I would just make sure that you get the same weight as you're used to using. That way you're shooting the same. Same thing, crossbows, longbows, recurves. You want to make sure you match the same weight of your broadhead that matches the tip that you're shooting. Now, like your crossbows, they're designed to be shot with a specific bolt weight as well as a tip weight. So if you change those, then your crosshairs and your scope are now not on. You can readjust your 20, but your 30, 40, 50, how many crosshairs you have in there, they're not going to be at those distances. So you're going to have to shoot them to see where you're at. So that's why you want to stay with the tip of the crossbow manufacturers recommends you shoot 125 grain, then you shoot 125 grain, and you're just going to get better performance. On your compounds, this not the same thing, but close. You want to make sure that you have the same tip. If you're shooting, like in my case, I shoot 100 grain. My broadheads are also 100 grain. That way my spacing doesn't change. All I got to do is reset my 20-yard pin if I have to, and then just by moving the whole cage, and then that way my other distance there, because it's the same total weight of your arrow. Now, if your broadhead on there, you're going to have a little bit different balance because the broadheads are longer than the field tips. So you're going to have a little bit more weight on the front of the shaft. So your balance point may not be exactly in the same spot, but generally at hunting ranges that most people hunt at, you're 20 yards or less, you're not going to see a difference in those. You can probably even go up to 125 grain tip, and at 20 yards or less, you're probably not going to notice much. I don't recommend doing that, but whatever you go with, you want to make sure you practice with it. So that's kind of the lowdown on broadheads. You want to look and see what are your game. If you're shooting small game, your rabbits, your squirrels, that smaller game like that, get a tip that's designed for those. If you're shooting turkeys, make sure you get broadheads designed for shooting turkeys. And if you're shooting a deer or a larger size animal, you want to make sure you get the broadheads that's appropriate for that size animal. And then crossbows, make sure you match your broadheads with that. So that's kind of basically a lowdown on broadheads and what they're good for. So I'll put up a link in the description below if you want to join the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. There we have a lot of good information. There's archery instructors out there, bow techs out there that can help you with whatever problems you have. If you're having problems with tuning them or anything, they can help you with that. And the other thing you can do is go out to the archerytalk101.com website, And there we have information out there. There's boat tech tips, there's shooting tips. There's also products that I recommend and use. You can look in there. There's links out to Amazon and other different places that you can look at. And then if you're looking at getting some coaching going on, I have an online coaching program that I have started. I'm taking applications for there. The next group, I've got 4 spots open. So if you want to get a little better at shooting, come learn from an instructor who's been teaching for over 25 years. I've got a lot of good information on that. So I'll also leave a link into the description for the application for that as well. So go out there and improve your shooting skills. We've been able to take archers and get them shooting a lot better, and been real good at seeing little problems here and there, and everybody can improve, and everybody deserves to improve and shoot the best. I believe all you archers out there, you have the ability to hit the spot you're aiming at. So let's look at some coaching, and it will get you there a lot quicker. And once again, I'll leave a description for that and the link for the podcast here. So once again, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I have been your host here on Archery Talk 101.